All right, I'm gonna tell you how time travel doesn't work, and I am holding a lot of media accountable in this one statement. Any media, movie, TV series, book that has depicted time travel and has broken this rule is doing it wrong and needs to think different. Time travel. If you are having an object travel through time, time affects it. Period. The end. Um, I think that we've had a lot of people who think that you can avoid the impact of time and therefore bring an object through time, like have a ancient artifact that looks brand new and bring it to the modern day without any age happening to it. It's not possible. That's not how reality works. Once you transport an object through time, time is going to affect it. So if you have like some kind of like time jump from millions ago to now, then the object that you transported, it's going to age. And so a lot of people seem to expect you can use time travel to kind of travel, physically travel, um, and just kind of skip time, and that's not the case. Um, so there's a lot of people doing reality shifting who are also doing time travel, and I want to kind of apply this because a lot of people asking about reality shifting, asking like, hey, well, if you're able to do reality shifting, then why can't you like have something appear to prove it from the other universe? And well, in many cases, I believe that reality shifting is just time travel. So you can't bring the object from the other universe because there is no other universe. It's from your universe. And when you bring it through, it's gonna age. It's going to experience time travel. You are not exempt from time travel if you travel through time. I think that many people think that time travel is actually sort of immunity from the effects of time itself, and then kind of fast forwarding through all the stuff that you're not being affected by. But like, even if you would kind of say use reality shifting to jump 1,000 years ahead, you'd basically mentally like you'd wake up in a body of somebody who is there in 1,000, and everything has to age uh the same way in the same place. Time is not consistent across the entire universe. Nothing is. But um you can't really get around time when you travel, because when you physically travel anywhere, it requires time paths. It's like, unless time passes, you cannot move. So if you've traveled through time, let's say you've traveled 100 years, then your object will move through 100 years, and as it moves through 100 years, it will age. So like, um honestly, this is the reason why reincarnation happens, is because you run out of your body runs out and you move to a new one. um that's just migration. So I think what's really frustrating about this is that a lot of times when people have like stories where there's proof of time travel, like they deliver the proof, they finally can prove that the whole thing happened, um they produce something that would be impossible to produce without time travel. And of course, it's always like, here's this special artifact that's not showing any age. Here's this thing that, I couldn't have, like that miraculously survived, and it's pristine as if it had never gone through anything. It's like, no, it has to age. You cannot avoid the effects of time. You might be able to delay them. Um, Even then, like, you're going to probably have to be in some kind of different gravity or different oxygen environment to truly experience any kind of delay in the physical effects, but it is only a delay. Um, a good way to think about objects that are time traveling. Actually, I want to talk about real objects that are time traveling or have time traveled. Let's talk about saint relics. So, if you don't know, saint relics are something, I know about this from the Catholic Church. There are probably other traditions and religions that do this, but basically, to be a saint, according to the Catholic Church, you have to fulfill certain requirements, and one of those is that an actual miracle happen specifically involving the saint and not just happening, and the saint just happened to be there. Basically, God has to produce an undeniable sign that God has a specific relationship with this person. And sorry, one of my cats was growling. God has a specific relationship with this person and is making sure the human world knows, so they act different. Like, that's, otherwise why would you know there's a saint? It's to do something. So one of the signals that God is supposed to send that someone is a saint is that their remains don't decay. That's what a relic is. It is typically it can be anything from a piece of hair to like a finger. It's a part of someone that hasn't decayed, even though you'd think by this point it would. And the thing about saint relics is that some of them actually have decayed by now. That's one of the interesting parts, in my opinion, is that some of them have survived, but some of them have actually fallen to time. And it turns out that, according to science, the reason why these relics haven't decayed is because they were preserved in such a way that it would be very difficult for them to decay, or it would be very slow for them to decay. For instance, they're often put in vessels that are like, sealed glass, sealed in glass, or it's in oil, it's in some other kind of like preservative fluid that's either regularly changed or is like a good idea from the get. If something were preserved in honey, then it would last a very long time because honey is antimicrobial. So there's a scientific explanation for why the thing doesn't decay, but it's still recognized that, for instance, in ones that did actually eventually decay, it took hundreds of years longer than expected for it to show any signs of aging. So you've got basically objects that seem like they aren't aging, but if you measured them with science, you would find that yes, atomic decay is happening. Natural atomic decay that just sort of happens over time. That's happening. Like chemical processes are happening at a very slow rate. It's just that this object was very lucky and it doesn't look as bad as it should after all this time. So these objects, they are time traveling. They are not showing the wear and tear of time, but they are still experiencing time. They basically have been given time capsules. In fact, I'd say that saint relics are in fact a time capsule. The objects in a time capsule are also a very good example of how objects that travel through time still experience the effects of time. There were a couple of time capsules that got dug up, like I think either the last year or maybe the last couple of years in the US. And one thing that was notable was that one of them was very damaged. It was kind of unofficially put in, I believe. Or no, they were looking for it, and the contents did get a little bit flooded. Basically, they had planted the time capsule about 100 years ago, and the vessel that it was in had gotten water damaged. So some of the stuff inside had experienced plenty of aging, but some of the stuff inside was more preserved than you would expect. And so it just turned out that chamber wasn't very hyperbolic. Sorry. So I don't think we're ever going to have someone prove time travel by bringing an object through time that just doesn't show the effects of time on it. I don't think that's really the point of time travel. I also don't think it's really very useful. Because like, I don't know, that there's just, what are you even going to do with this? Like, you're going to have to make some very long-term plans if you want to cause any practical effects with something like this anyway. So yeah, that's some of my feelings on time travel. I want to kind of emphasize something though. Whenever a person's traveling through time, they really do have to age. not showing the effects of actual temporal reality is not something you're going to do inside of temporal reality. I, this is really frustrating. Um, I want to see people do more creative stuff with time travel in terms of fictional stories, and I don't think people really understand what the potential is here. Instead, it's all about trying to produce a reality that we're never going to experience, which I think is kind of pointless. So traveling through time, if you are in this point in time and then you suddenly appear in this point in time, when you're in this point in time, that aging is going to catch up with you. That's just how time is. That was what time is. Time is the effects. Time is the consequences. Time is change. So you cannot appear here later on in time until you experience its effects. In fact, as you appear here, you will experience its effects. Its effects. Um, and there's really, I don't think there's any way to get past that barrier. Otherwise, you don't have time. This is our reality has fundamental laws about it, and those laws aren't mean things that are holding things down until we figure out how to finally break them. Those laws are literally just how things work, and you're not going to have them work a different way. Um, you're not going to discover some new particle that's going to make time unhappen. Um, I really wish that Ant-Man had done a much better job in its movies with actually depicting the real science of quantum mechanics, because the Pym particles thing, like I know some of this comes from the comics, but the Pym particles thing is just like, what is this? Or is this supposed to be protons? Like, is this supposed to be some kind of radioactive material? What is a Pym particle? Where does it come from? What matter generates it? How does it act over time? Um, like what are its external effects? Uh, what does the standard model look like in the Marvel universe? Where is the Pym particle in the standard model? Um, Stuff like the Pym particles, I feel, came into Marvel Comics's plot line at a time when particle physics was in a much different place. You don't discover particles anymore and have no place to put them. They actually have a relationship with the other particles we've already discovered, and we have an idea of what's going on with them. So, again, stuff doesn't just show up out of nowhere, breaking all of the laws, and then you have to figure out how. Like, even if it does seem like, and nothing shows up all of a sudden according to different rules than the entire rest of the universe. Everything in the universe is subject to the exact same rules. That would be the uni in the verse, the unity. Everything is together here, and the thing that they're together in is the physical reality. That's going to affect you in time. It's going to affect you in physical space. It's going to affect you everywhere, unless you're not in physical reality, period, in which case it's not going to affect you. That's the only way out. Like, the only way out of experiencing time is to not be in physical reality. And I suggest that you just deal with it and experience time. Um, I think that it is really interesting to look at things that have been preserved over a very long time that don't show the effects of aging the way that other things show the effects of aging. I think that there might be something there to help us understand. Perhaps we could experience time with a minimal amount of change, that maybe we're not even talking about time, and all it is that people actually are trying to eliminate or avoid entropy. Um, and time and entropy are different things. I think people look at the effects of entropy, like the decay over time, and they associate that decay with time. But the decay itself isn't time. The decay is experienced over the course of time. The decay is part of how you can measure time. Observation of the decay helps you observe how much time has passed. So, what we're really trying to do is eliminate the effects of aging, not travel through time, is what I'm really seeing. And I know that specifically because we are humans, and therefore we're going to be in some way most concerned with human things. The big thing is, how do we mitigate the effects of aging on the human body? Is there anything that we can do to make the human body age less, or at least take less damage over time? Um, and I think that's probably going to net a lot more useful observations and useful for humanity than trying to do it through particle science. Um, like at some point, I might go do a video on the realities of particle physics versus the particle physics that you're seeing in, like, the Marvel movies and other types of, like, hyperculture. Um, because the reality of how you discover these particles, for instance, the amount of times that people are surprised by a new kind of matter or element in the comic book universes is pretty stupid. The entire point of science is that you expected that to happen. Sometimes there are discoveries that happen by shock, that happen by chance, but most of the time, when you do an experiment, it signals a period of doing things on purpose. So, since you are doing things on purpose, you are expecting certain kinds of results. Part of the experiment is to predict the results that you are going to get. So, when you're surprised by your results, it means that it went against your prediction. This is not supposed to happen that often in science. You don't usually make a shocking discovery. It's more that someone discovers something, they make a theory, they do an experiment to test out that theory, and then they find out whether that theory was correct or not. That part is the science. The part where you discover something weird, that's just finding stuff. Anybody could do that. There's no test involved. Oh man, that thing weird. That's not science. The science part is, you're like, that thing's weird. Let me figure out how. Figuring out how is the scientific part. Um, so you're not gonna get, I randomly discovered these particles that whenever I release them, they do quantum physics different. There's no way to keep a particle in anything. Like, all you can do is measure that it happened. There are some parts of matter that you can actually keep in a jar and give to someone. You have to, it's very difficult for them to locate it inside the jar because it's so tiny, but it is possible. But, like, you don't just have accidents or something knock over or the laser went off a different way like than it should, and then you discover this brand new thing. Usually whenever things go different, and somebody gets hurt. There's been at least one occasion where a high energy particle beam has gone through someone's head in a lab area, and it was because of a mistake. Somebody fired the particle beam whenever somebody was in the room and they didn't know it. The door was supposed to lock and it didn't. The light was supposed to go on to warn them and it didn't. And so this guy got a high energy particle beam going through his head. He didn't get superpowers, he just died. Like, all that happens is that bad things happen. So, um, I I really wish that time travel was treated less, not less fantastically, but just with actual, like, more thought. Um, all this kind of sparked from me watching a video that mentioned the time traveler's wife. And I saw, like, some of the things that are happening, like, he's a kid and he's running up to her, like, whenever he's, like, 10 or something, but, like, the next thing he's, like, appearing somewhere in the middle of whenever, and he's naked and he's got to go steal clothes from the laundromat. And it's like, really? Stealing clothes from the laundromat? Is that what we've fallen to in this era of depravity? You're gonna have clothes. They're gonna age. Like, this person's body is basically randomly jumping to different points in physical development. That's just, do something real. Figure out real problems that people are actually experiencing. I promise you, there's really interesting stuff that is happening in the field of time travel. There's theoretical stuff that you could like presume that, like do some stories on that, like are people actually theorize could be happening. Do that stuff. Um, Start teaching people how time travel really works. I'm tired of seeing this fictionalized version that doesn't really help anybody learn anything and isn't going to go anywhere in reality and just gives them the wrong idea of how time travel works and how time works. I hate movies and other media that kind of give people the belief that science is just something that you can skip, that you don't have to feel the effects of science if you just do the right thing. Scientific uh scientific effects, the effects of physical reality, those can all be avoided. They can't. That's the entire point of reality.